Hello everyone, welcome to the second tutorial of IAT355. Today we will be covering the basics of Observable, G3, and Vigolite. Let's get started with Observable. Once you have successfully created an account, click on the New button here to create a new notebook. The first cell here is automatically added for you. You can change this text to anything you want, and run this cell by clicking this button, the play button, at the right of the cell, or by hitting Shift Enter on your keyboard. Observable will run this code in the background and will present you with the output of this code at the top of the cell. To add any text inside the notebook, we will be using this markdown command. So let's talk a little bit more about the markdown command. First, let's add one more cell to this notebook. We will do this by clicking onto this plus sign. To let Observable know that you want to add some text here, we will start with the markdown md command and add to backtext here. Anything you add inside this will be represented as a text. Let's add something here, and let's put in front of something a hash. Executing this by hitting Shift Enter or hitting the play button will give you something as a header 1 in HTML. Similarly, we can put two hashes, rerun this cell, and this will give us a header 2. Let's add some more markdowns. Let's add a cell by hitting the plus button. Let's type in MD and more markdowns. Inside the backtext, let's add a few more lines and rerun this cell. As you can see that the negative sign and the minus sign corresponds to bullet points here. Let's add a few more lines here, re-execute it, and this shows that the star or the asterisk corresponds to italic text. If you put two asterisks, it's bold. If you want to add a website link to a text, you put the text in square brackets and add the link in single braces. Couple of things that's useful to know is, let's say if you want to hide the code of this text, just click on the left and this will hide or unhide the code. If you want to pin this code onto the notebook, you can always do this by clicking onto this pin button or clicking onto this again to unpin it. However, you cannot hide a code that has been already pinned. So to hide it, first you need to unpin it and then you can hide that code. Markdowns can do a little bit more than just adding text. Let's add one more line to this list and let's rerun it. Instead of doing this calculation ourselves, we can ask Observable to compute 4 plus 5 equals 9 automatically. We can do this by changing this 9 and adding a $sign followed by a couple of curly braces and then adding 4 plus 5 inside it. Rerunning it doesn't change anything because on the output level 4 plus 5 is equal to 9. But let's say if I change this to 6 and rerun it, this time this is going to be 10. So to make it a proper output, we should also change this to 6, and now we have it. Instead of making everything so static, we can also make it a little bit more dynamic. Let's add a cell and let's say x is equal to 4, or let's say 5. Adding one more cell, y is equal to 10. Let's change this to x and this to y. Let's run the cell again, and as you can see that Observable was able to understand that this x is actually coming from this line and y from this line. So let's change this to x and y too. Oops, something weird has happened. Unless you put X and Y inside curly braces and dollar, this will be considered as a text. So to fix it, let's add dollar and curly braces around each of the two variables. And running it will fix this issue. In this example, one thing to notice is that this ordering of the cells is not important. I have declared or created a variable x in this line, but I have called x in this line. Similarly for y, it has been called or declared way down here, whereas it has been called way up here. To give you another example, let's add one more line and let's say sum is equal to x plus y. Let's run it and let's reposition this cell. Hovering over the three dots, hold and drag and bring it up. If you change the value of x or y down here, let's say if I change this to 7, this change will get reflected not just here, also in the output here. A minimap at the top right shows you the relationship between sum and x and y. Repositioning sum to a lower level will change the position of sum, or maybe to the middle level will change the ordering of the cells, but the relationship is always same. X and Y comes before sum. An observable automatically understands which cells are dependent on which others. For example, if I click on this cell, you will be able to see that this cell is also dependent on X and Y, whereas it has no relation with the sum cell. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about JavaScript and Observable. In the back, Observable is running on JavaScript. This means that you can run any JavaScript code here in Observable. Let's quickly dive into an example. Let's open on this cell and let's add some JavaScript code here. So running this cell will give me an output like this. For those of you who are not used to JavaScript, basically what we're doing here is we are going through a loop n times, and every time we're adding the character A into a string, which eventually results in this string. Important thing to notice here is you always need to return this string for this to be shown as an output in Observable. Also, the JavaScript code must be enclosed in curly braces. This means that these variables are local to this cell, as in, we won't be able to catch this variable n outside of the cell. However, if you want to use the output of this JavaScript code somewhere else, you can always save this output into a variable, and you can call this variable anywhere in the code just by calling the name of the variable there. Now that we have introduced all the tools we need, let's move on to the next segment.